Today I want to talk about screws, the plethora of different types of screws on a British engine. We're talking threads of British standard, fine, unified thread, SAE, you name it, it's all there. And what I find is that people that come to me for repairs would quite often just put a screw in that seems to fit reasonably well. And in all these cases, of course, they're stripping the threads, and in a lot of the cases they're aluminium that they're trying to put a bolt into, and munching up the thread, and then tighten it up, and of course nothing happens, and so the threads are completely stripped. So, and I've got a situation here at the moment that I'm going to talk about, plus a couple of other things. So let me flip you over. Okay, what I've got here is the engine, which has now been lowered to near the ground, and what I've got to do is install or get ready for fitment the gearbox mechanism on this end. So I've had to take away the engine stand so that I can gain access to this whole rear end of the car, of the engine. With that, you might notice here I've got the flywheel and the makings there of the clutch mechanism. You'll notice two little pink crosses at the bottom there. That's because these have been weight tested and balanced, and you'll see a bit of wear there on the other end of that, just this part up here, and then there's your two little crosses. So I've got to try and keep them in that order as well. The whole crankshaft, pistons and conrods have all been balanced by a professional, and so I'm hoping to keep all that in line. Before I do that, I've managed to find the bolts, clean them up, and they all look quite good, except for right on the underside of this. Oops, you can see those two holes there, and they're a really difficult, awful thread. The problem is I can't buy BSF bolts anymore. I've been to the local suppliers, they just don't make them anymore. So the dilemma is that what do you do about that? And the only thing I can do is make them. You'll also notice this square block here. I've had to, in this case, it's a new modification that I've done to the rear of the crankshaft, and it's to stop oil leak. Luckily, what I've got is taps that I've bought and people have given to me over time to establish what size thread I've got. This happens to be a BSF, pretty standard fine, 5/16. Okay, so I put the tap in, and if I can turn it by hand reasonably well, or even with a wrench very lightly, and you can feel when you screw them in if you're damaging the thread or not. This is into cast iron, and it felt quite smooth and good, so I know that that's a 5/16 BSF thread. Now that thread is, according to this tap, is 22 TPI. My issue is that this mechanism here that I've put on, this modification, which is rounded at the bottom, I won't be able to fit a bolt head in this area here because of the interference of this mechanism here that I've put in. So I've got to modify that. So I still need 5/16 BSF thread with probably a socket head. Now of course they're impossible to buy, so I have no choice but to make one. The adapter plate here I've had to cut out further to make it fit. So in other words, I've had to score this area out here, and this is where those two bolt holes are. And you can see here that I just got no way of putting a bolt head on that. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, is put a 5/16 BSF thread on with a socket head type head. Also, this is the original new gasket that I've got, and you can see here I've had to, it's really just never lined up properly, and it's much too thin here. So what I need to do is make a new gasket. So what I actually did was I used that, traced on baking paper the outline of that and modified it to suit, to get me out to where I need to go. And if I turn that around, you can see that it sits fairly well, which will follow the engine line here, and or the block line if you like, and I now need to punch that out. So with that, I've now got, this is out of paper and cardboard, and then the gasket itself is this material here, which I've got. So that'll sit over. The only thing I need to do with that is punch holes in that. So I would hold that over there, and then where you see these round holes, punch the appropriate holes with a hole punch. Okay, so 2 jobs today that need to be done. Okay, that's that job done. So that's where the engine is, and this whole mechanism here needs to sit something like up under there, and like so. Can you see that? That looks actually quite weird, but that's the alignment of it according to these 2 alignment spigots that I've got, and that's why it can be a bit confusing, because this bolt here is just sitting out on its own. So that's how it sits. We've got our gasket, of course, which will normally sit behind this, and it's up here something like this. All right. So okay, now my issue is that if I use this tap and then actually screw it in to at least just get it started, and then I can hopefully measure what I need to do, and it looks like I've got probably I might actually have 12 mil of head that I can use. So 12 mil sounds good. What I'll do is I'll start that. You'll see me in this section here actually turning the headstock by hand, and the reason for that is that stainless steel has a terrible habit of grabbing and tearing and I didn't want to destroy the thread, so I'm doing this slowly and carefully, and you'll see later on that the threads are actually quite good and look really great. Here I'm bringing in the parting tool, just doing the alignment of it against the face of the headstock and cutting off the screw with the tool that I've got there. Okay, before we drill that, let's try it and see how the socket size goes. I've got minimal clearance there, but it's clear. That's the main thing. Okay, so what I have here is the set screw, and I've got a disposable one I can destroy Allen key, which I'm going to have to cut a piece off that. So we measure the distance across the flats, which is 4.98 mil, let's say 5, and we take a 5 mil drill, okay, and we go in about 5 mil as well. So let's set up on the lathe and do that. Okay, I did just clean these up a little bit. Just ran the dye through them again for any burrs, and just cleaned up the ends as well. So a good fit for the Allen key. So we can start looking at installing these again.